Hello, everyone. Welcome to Barca News. It is May 4th, 2026, and Barcelona are currently pushing to sign one of the most promising midfielders in Spain. And also, speaking of promising players, Barcelona are throwing their hat in the race for one of the most promising center forwards to come out of France. And finally, Barcelona considering yet another option for that center back position in case the Bastoni deal does not go through. We have a lot to discuss, so let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. I'll begin this video with the news that Barcelona are currently working on retaining Patricio Pacifico despite his injury. Now, if you don't know who Patricio Pacifico is, he's a 19-year-old Uruguayan left back. He can also play as a left center back, who Barcelona signed this past January on loan from Defensor Sporting. And immediately, Patricio Pacifico made an impact with Barca Athletic, where not only he became a starter in that left back position, but he became a natural leader on and off the field. And right when Barcelona decided to sign Patricio Pacifico on a permanent basis, a big injury. The player was faced with a big injury, which is he tore his ACL, and as a result, he will be out for 12 months. And that, of course, created a dilemma for Barcelona because on one hand, they wanted to keep Patricio Pacifico, and on the other hand, of course, he tore his ACL. That's a very serious injury, and a lot of times we don't know how players are going to recover from. So the question was Barcelona going to keep Patricio Pacifico or not? And well, Barcelona have come up with a solution. Now, Barcelona are currently in negotiations with Defensor Sporting to try to find a solution to Patricio Pacifico's situation. And Barcelona are currently working on extending his loan by one more season until the summer of 2027, which to me is the perfect solution because on one hand, if you let him go, you don't sign him, he might recover from his ACL perfectly, and then he ends up being this huge, amazing left back that you missed out on. On the other hand, if you sign him on a permanent transfer, maybe he doesn't recover from his ACL tear, and, well, you just wasted money. But instead, by getting him for another loan for a whole season, well, that's the perfect bridge between those two scenarios because Patricio Pacifico will be fully recovered by the beginning of next year of 2027, which means he will have the remainder of that season to once again show us whether he has fully recovered or not. And if he has, boom, you sign him. Perfect. Back on track. And if he hasn't, well, then you can return him. But hopefully he will fully recover and hopefully we can have an incredible left back for the future. Now, speaking of the future, Barcelona are currently pushing hard to sign one of the most promising midfielders in Spain, whose name is David Suedo. Now, if you haven't heard about David Suedo, he's a 16-year-old attacking midfielder currently playing for Celta Vigo. He is considered a standout prospect out of Celta Vigo's academy, which is known to produce some pretty impressive talents. He joined Celta Vigo's academy back in 2023, and since then he has progressed through multiple levels. And so far, despite being only 16 years old, he's already played 21 matches for the under-18 team and 7 matches for the under-19 team, which shows that he is way, way ahead of his age group. And he's even trained with Celta Fortuna, which is the reserve team for Celta Vigo, the equivalent, of course, of Barca Athletic. And he's even been called up to Spain's under-16 squad. Now, David Suedo is known for his technical quality and composure, and Barcelona believe that he fits La Masia's vision. So they would like to sign him. But of course, there are some hurdles in Barcelona's attempt because Barcelona are not the only club who have noticed this young prospect. Real Madrid and other European clubs are also tracking his progress. And of course, Celta Vigo themselves are not looking to sell him. So Barcelona have a difficult road ahead of them. But nonetheless, the club are pushing very hard to sign David Suedo to bring him to La Masia. Now, while we're still on the topic of young, promising players, Barcelona are reportedly now throwing their hats for a player, their hats in the ring for a player that, well, we have talked about in the past. One of the most promising attackers to come out of France, who's no other than Eli Jr. Kroupi, or Kroupi, monsieur, who is a 19-year-old center forward who recently joined Bournemouth. He's also an international with France's under 21, someone who's considered one of the most promising center forwards currently in Europe. In fact, during his first season, he has scored 12 goals in 30 matches, becoming the only teenager to score that many goals in his maiden campaign in the Premier League. Amazing accomplishment for the 19-year-old. And of course, given his standout season, he has now attracted the attention of Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Manchester United. And of course, Barcelona, who have already been tracking him for quite some time. Now, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that Kroupi has a contract with Bournemouth until 2030 and has a market value of 40 million euros, which means Bournemouth will be looking for, well, a pretty high price tag, something that most likely Barcelona will not be able to afford, especially for a 19-year-old. You know, if Bournemouth end up asking for 50 or 60 million, you know, that's something that Barcelona would rather spend, of course, on someone with more experience. But of course, we're going to have to wait and see what price tag Bournemouth puts on the youngster. But just know that Barcelona throwing their hat in the ring for one of the most promising attackers currently in Europe. Now, let's move on to the next bit of news, because Barcelona have identified yet another option in case the Bastoni deal does not go through. Because as you know, Barcelona's number one option to reinforce the center back is Alessandro Bastoni. Bastoni has already given the green light to come to Barcelona. Barcelona are currently in talks with Inter Milan for his transfer, but of course the big problem is that Inter Milan wants 70 million euros for Bastoni, a price tag that Barcelona are not willing to pay. Negotiations are ongoing, or talks are ongoing. But in the meantime, of course, Barcelona have to identify option Bs in case the Bastoni deal does not go through. One of them, of course, we talked about yesterday, which is El Cuti Romero. But now Barcelona adding another name to their option B list, who's no other than Evan Endika, someone we talked about in the past, 26 years old, Ivory Coast international, currently playing with AC Roma. He currently has a 35 million euro market value, and he has a contract until 2028 with the Serie A club in Barcelona. Seriously consider him in case the Bastoni deal does not go through. And of course, this is also part of Barcelona's strategy, which I mentioned in the podcast, of showing Inter Milan, hey, we have plenty of options. So if the Bastoni deal doesn't work, well, that's okay. We have other names. We have Cuti Romero. We have Evan Indica, as opposed to you, Inter Milan, who need to sell players. And well, Bastoni only wants Barca or Inter. So your only option is to sell them to us. As far as us, we have plenty of options to buy. So we'll see whether all this works with Inter Milan reducing their price. But even if it doesn't, again, we have options. Evan Indica being one of them. Now, let's end today's video with some great news, because, ladies and gentlemen, Coutinho has decided to stay at Barcelona. Now, as I reported in a previous video, not one, not two, but three Saudi clubs are interested in signing Coutinho. Of course, Saudi tried to sign Coutinho last summer, offering 90 million to Barcelona and offering Rafinha a multi-million euro contract. And now there are three clubs interested in him who are reportedly willing to offer between 100 to 120 million euros for Barca, and offering Rafinha even a bigger contract than they were willing to offer him last season. And this, of course, raised alarm bells within Barcelona, for fear that, even though they were confident that Rafinha would prefer to stay at Barcelona, of course, when you are faced, or when you're offered a lot of money, that could change the opinion of anyone. But thankfully, Rafinha has informed the club that no, he is not interested in joining any of those Saudi clubs, even though he is aware of their multi-million offer, because of course he wants to continue at Barcelona. He feels valued by Flick, his teammates, the fans, and the club. So he wants to continue here, even though he could be making a lot more money in Saudi Arabia, which of course goes to the point that I've always made on this channel. Money cannot buy happiness. In fact, this has been proven scientifically speaking, where at the beginning, the more money you make, the happier you are. But once you reach a certain point, after that, more money doesn't equal more happiness. And when you're someone like Rafinha, who's already making millions, who's already bought everything there is to buy, making a few more millions is not going to make a difference, because he already has everything he needs. So it stops being about making more money. It starts being about, well, accomplishing the goals that you set out to be, including playing at Barcelona, one of the greatest clubs in history. And I'm sure Rafinha would like to win the Champions League as well. Something, of course, cannot do at Saudi Arabia. So those extra few million are not going to make a difference if you're not happy because you're not accomplishing your goals, because at the end of the day, you already have everything you need. So what's a few more million? Why, you're going to get a 10th car, a third house. But anyways, that is all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I did do the podcast earlier today. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to check it out. Lots of good news in there. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. And as always, Biscarsa.